All right, a little over a month into this already, and I'm pretty happy with the progress that I've made so far. I know there's really not that much time left, so I gotta kick it into high gear, but I like where it's going. We've got a semi-playable game at the moment. I did get stuck this week, which I'll get into the details of that and kind of some options I have moving forward. But let's get into it. Okay, so here's the game concept that I came up with last week, inspired by Buckshot Roulette, like I said. So it's you versus an AI opponent, and you're both hitting this cursed piñata, trying not to be the one to break it, because whoever breaks it unleashes the curse on themselves. You're locked in this room in a showdown to the death where you have to hit it, but you decide if you hit 1, 2, or 3 times, and you pick your weapon before your turn starts as well. And the reason you'd want to hit it more or hit it harder is you get more candy, which you can use for items or to lower your curse and basically gain an advantage between rounds. So it's this balance of hitting it, but not going too far because you don't know how much health the piñata has. So I'm aiming for this tense battle of back and forth, taking risks to get more reward, but not being the one to break the piñata. And similar to Buckshot Roulette, it's probably gonna be like where you play 3 rounds, you can upgrade between rounds. So yeah, that's the general gist of it. I started prototyping it out, so I'll show you what that process looked like. So since I'm still not the greatest in the coding department, I decided to physically prototype the game first. And I gathered things like a deck of cards and dice to simulate RNG. And I even made little clay models just for the heck of it. So I ran through a few rounds of the game where I would hit the piñata and draw a card or roll a die and kind of just see what value of damage I do. And same for receiving curse and candy. And you're never gonna know exactly how much health the piñata has, so you have to go off of visual clues like how it's swinging calmly here. But the more you hit it, the more violently it will start to flail around, and that'll let you know it's really close to death, so you have to be careful with your hits. So your choices each round are between light, medium, and heavy weapons, which in this case are a stick, baseball bat, and a sledgehammer. And then you pick if you wanna do 1, 2, or 3 hits. And I feel like that's a decent start to make the game a little more dynamic. So remember last week when I said this? I really don't want to commit to full 3D. Well, I did it anyway. I was modeling a bunch of stuff in 3D to begin with, and then I realized I'm already basically doing a 3D project. So I switched over and just gave it a shot, especially since in the 2D view, the viewport displays were overlapping and not aligning correctly, and it was just causing all kinds of issues. So I may go back to that, but we'll see. And speaking of 3D modeling, I learned how to do some geometry nodes, some 3D texturing in Blender. As you can see, it's pretty rough, but it gives you the basic idea of like paper on a piñata. So I'll clean this up later, but this is what we're starting with. And I gotta show you the progress on learning Blender this week. I started with this little buggy eye guy that you've seen before, but I iterated on the design over and over until I actually was decently happy with my end result. So I'll show you the progression from this to my current model that I'm using. Here it is. I think that's sufficiently cursed. I don't have the 3D paper textures on it yet, but that's okay. We'll add that later. Yeah, working prototype, baby. This is what the game was looking like earlier this week, but it has evolved even beyond that, so I'll show you in a second. But to start with, we got little weapon selection animations and camera panning. And then you pick how many hits you want to do, and the piñata swings back as if it got hit. But obviously I'm going to adjust how this all looks. And now what you've really been waiting for, here is the game currently. Yeah, so we've got a nearly playable game here. The UI is obviously really basic, but it all works. And the weapon selection works, and the damage changes accordingly based on which one you pick. So the stick does the least damage, and the sledgehammer does the most damage. It also does the most curse. So I'll start with the sledgehammer just to kind of show the scale we're working with here. So 3 hits. You get a lot of curse, but also a lot of candy. And then the AI turn starts automatically. So he just did 1 hit, and it's not really clear at the moment what the AI has picked, but I'll make that more straightforward in the future. So now I'm gonna pick the stick just to kind of show the comparison. It barely does any curse, and it gets you less candy. So really the only core things missing still are the effects when the curse meter fills up. And those will be things like breaking one of the weapons, losing some candy, or being forced to hit it extra times on your next turn. And for the candy, I want items to display between rounds, and I'm working on implementing those too. So you can either spend it to repair a weapon, lower your curse meter, or purchase an ability that will affect you or your opponent. I gotta make the AI a little smarter too. Right now it's just totally random. But yeah, it's a decent little game. Then I ran into an issue that I think is pretty common to game design, where the idea itself is more fun than the actual gameplay. And I'm not willing to just settle for okay gameplay or kind of boring. I want it to be actually fun. And so honestly, I got pretty stuck on that this week, trying to come up with like, where is the real fun and like, how can we make this concept really engaging and to where it makes you want to replay it over and over. So after tons of brainstorming and after talking to a bunch of people and getting their opinions and ideas and feedback, I think I finally had a breakthrough towards the end of this week. And so I'll kind of outline what that looks like as well. I'm playing around with different lighting options for the game, so as I do that, I'll explain the current situation. Basically, every round ends up playing out similarly because you're always going to want to start with heavy hits. The piñata's health is full and there's really low risk, plus you want to get more candy. But the rounds always end with light taps because you don't want to be the one to break it, so it starts and ends pretty much the same. And the only variability is the piñata's health and the items. So I feel like that alone wasn't quite enough. And after turning to a bunch of friends and getting their ideas, like I said, I think I have 3 or 4 main paths forward from here. One, you could choose from a hand of cards that predetermine the moves you can make. So you're cycling through a deck of like heavy hits, light hits, using an item, stuff like that. Or there could be new rules each round. So you flip a card and on this round, suddenly the stick gives you double candy. Option 3 is making your hit choices directly interact with the opponent. So if you both hit with a sledgehammer, for example, you'll do like double damage and it's way riskier. So you have to think a lot more about what your opponent is doing, almost like a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing, like in my previous devlog. And finally, one of my friends suggested this yesterday. Your goal in the first half is to be the one to drain the curse from the piñata without breaking it. So it will have its own curse meter that you're trying to get down to 0. And then once it's been like exercised essentially, then it's a race to who can break it first and get the candy and rewards out of it. So it'll be kind of like a 2-phase thing, and I really like that. So I'm gonna experiment with all these different ideas and see where they take me, and I'm gonna keep prototyping before actually committing to programming it fully. So yeah, now that I have what I think is a breakthrough for the game, this next week I really wanna just finish the game system and have something totally playable from beginning to end. Even if it's a short little level, I just want it to be playable and then I can expand on it from there. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about the style. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I think I want it to be more stylized. But that's for later on, so I'll worry about that in the future. We don't have much time left, and I do have to get the Steam page up pretty soon, so wish me luck, and I'm gonna keep working on it. As always, I will keep you posted.